It's late. I hope everybody, though, is doing well. Happy Friday. Let me know if you have any thoughts on Freemasonry. Normally, on these Fridays, we don't talk about anything, we just hang out and chat. Or I shouldn't say that, rather, we don't have any specific topics. Rather, I just wait to see who wants to join in and who wants to chat about Freemasonry. And any thoughts you have on Freemasonry, positive, negative, or neutral. Looks like we might have Smokey the Clown in the stream with the hearts. Typical Smokey. If that is him, thank you for being here. There he is. First one to arrive. And Linking Atlas, hot on your trail, hot on the tail. Welcome to both of you. And Dylan. Good day, Dylan. I hope you're doing well. Thank you for being here. Going to be a shorter stream today because I have some stuff to do this afternoon. Also, I will be streaming tomorrow, probably between 12 and 1. I'll be doing a live stream of me getting my yearly tattoo, yearly Masonic tattoo. Taking a smoke break. How are things going at work? I hope they're going well for you. Yes, I'm definitely keeping busy, Dylan. That's not an issue. And Linking Atlas, that's very kind of you. Thank you for saying that. And I hope that you are doing well also. Dylan, I'm guessing it's more the evening for you, right? It's probably 7 or 8 o'clock, 7 or 8 p.m. in your neck of the woods down in Europe, right? In England, if I recall correctly. But let's give it a bit of time. Let's see who joins. You definitely don't want my advice, or at least not my advice exclusively. Get advice from everybody. That's the key, right? You want to get a variety of different opinions, and then you try to figure out which one works best for you, because everybody's circumstances are different. South Africa, okay. So yeah, 8/11. I would say I am the worst person to ask about relationship advice. First of all, that's not what this channel is all about. And secondly, even if it was, it shouldn't be because I would give terrible advice. I would say just focus on doing things you enjoy, focus on doing things that bring you happiness. Don't think about being single or being in a relationship. Just focus on the things that make you happy. And in the process, you're more likely to meet other people with the same interests, and you're going to go from there for whatever it's worth. That's my best advice. I am not in construction. I know I look like Bob the Builder, 8087. I think that's where you're coming from. Please hit the like and subscribe button. I'm 15 likes away from 3,100. Sorry, I'm 15 subscriptions away from 3,100 subs. So that should be pretty cool. Well, I guess I don't think about being single or not single, right? I just focus on doing things I enjoy. And my assumption is if I'm focused on doing things I enjoy and try to put good vibes out in the universe, sooner or later, those good vibes will, result in me finding the right person. I'm trying to make this my profession, Ayush. So please hit the like button. Please consider doing a super chat of 99 cents. That would be wonderful. Yes, I'm trying to turn my passion for Freemasonry into a profession. Certainly, being a Mason feels like my job, but Freemasonry, not stonemasonry. Thank you, everybody, for joining us. Please take a moment, jump in the chat, say hello. Cheese sandwiches sound delicious. I think Catholics, right? If you're Catholic, you're not supposed to eat meat on Fridays. You can have, fish. Hence, I was told that that's why McDonald's invented the filet o fish to serve to Catholics on Fridays. So, Bennett Judge, if you declare with your mouth Jesus is Lord and believe in your heart that God raised him from the dead, you will be saved. That's awesome, Bennett. I mean, I'm not a Christian myself, but I know many Christian Freemasons. And if you are Christian, then nothing but respect for you. The Christians I've known have been good people trying to make the world a better place. son, I didn't know if he was becoming Jewish. I never heard that. If he is, good for him. I have no real, no real opinion on anybody converting to Judaism, except I assume they're doing so because it makes them happy, or they find something within the faith that, gives them comfort. That's assuming he is. I never heard that, so I have no idea. You don't have to be trustful of Freemasonry, Dylan. It's still wonderful to have you here. Hopefully, you can at least be trustful of me and my opinions, and then you kind of go from there. Yes, get back to work, Smokey. You said you're swamped, but thank you for being here. It's much, much appreciated. I know I got a big head. Yep, hippie. Please hit like and subscribe nonetheless. Yeah, Pippi79 says I got an egg head. I know I got a very big head. It looks like an egg. I've grown to accept that. Christianity is chill at core. I mean, I think that is a danger that we face with almost any religion and almost any philosophy and any belief. It can be very chill at its core, but depend excuse me, depending on who's engaged with it, depending on who is, trying to use it, and especially if they're trying to use it for their own means or their own ends, it can be warped into something very different. Honestly, though, that's true of Freemasonry as well. I mean, Freemasonry, I think some people can get into Freemasonry and try to abuse it in certain ways. That's, again, Freemasons are human beings. So is every Christian. So is every, Muslim, whatever it is. And it's always very possible to try to warp the beliefs or to use the system for one's own kind of ends, be they political or otherwise. Hello, no filter. Frankenstein, that's a new one. Well, a cult requires you to have kind of unquestioning loyalty to a set of beliefs or ideals or to an individual and to place the cult above all other things. Freemasonry, first of all, expects you to put your family and your work ahead of it, which is the opposite of what a cult does. A cult tries to separate you from things outside the cult. Freemasonry encourages you to be loyal to those things. And also, Freemasonry is democratic in nature, and cults are not. Um, you can like cults as much as you want, but that doesn't mean Freemasonry is one. Vasu DMV. I don't know about Scientology and how extreme Vasu DVM. I'm not sure how extreme Scientology is. 'Cause I don't know. I don't know anything about it. I mean, um, it, I've never met a Scientologist who's, at least to my knowledge, but I don't know anything about it other than I'm not one who judges anybody's religious beliefs. If Scientology brings you a level of peace and comfort, then good for you. Yes, Hall Saul, I got a big brain. Please hit the like and subscribe button. I would greatly appreciate it. Oh, we got 6-7 from Kyle Rusin. I still don't know what that means other than it's something the kids are all doing. Please hit like and subscribes. Mystic Mountain, I have no idea what you're saying. Your grammar is not the best. Democracy led, not liberal of. So Freemasons, I'm sure you will find a Freemason who has dyed their hair blue and gold. After all, there's 850,000 Freemasons in the States, for example. What I will say is, I have never dyed my hair blue and gold, and Freemasonry is not liberal in a political sense. You could argue it's liberal, small l, in certain values, but that's not the same as being politically liberal. There are left wing, right wing, and everything in between liberals. Reject, I mean, Masonry is pretty traditional. Freemasonry dates back to probably 1634, between 1634 and 1717. So it's probably as traditional as you can get. Gustav Gold, hello. Thank you for being here. Um, Night Owl, as soon as they beg for, well, it's not a they, it's a one. I'm just one person. But still, you can come and go as you so choose. Tradition is not exclusively family linked, it can be. Tradition can come from families, it can also come from, it can come from a lot of different places. Family is just one of many. Um, Libertarian, not liberal. I don't know if I would describe Freemasonry as libertarian either. Um, I think Freemason, because I don't think you can classify Freemasonry in political terms. At various points in history, people have tried to classify Freemasonry and discuss it as though it were like where it fits on a left-right spectrum. The problem is it doesn't fit neatly on a left-right spectrum is the problem. I would say at various times in history, it has been more associated with left-wing politics, and at other times in history, it's been more associated with right-wing politics. So there's not a specific political kind of. It doesn't fit neatly onto a political spectrum. Um, Imagine saying an ant has a problem being an ant. People are people. We are all cult. Well, I mean, I'm sure that to ants, they have their own problems, right? Human beings, there are a lot of wonderful things about humans. There's also a lot of not so great things about humans. Um, it's one of those things where there's good and bad in all of us. The problem is sometimes human beings trend more toward their bad nature of themselves. I do believe, though, truly, that within Freemasonry, you have the philosophy and the ideals that will push you towards the better part of you and not the worst part of you or the more negative parts of being a human. Um, well, I mean, they were a club. I'm doing well, Dream Seeker. I mean, you can call Freemasonry a club. It's not a terrible term for it by any means. The idea of it being for powerful, educated, and rich people, it just depends on the time. Excuse me. Just depends on the time frame with which you're talking about it, as well as the location. I mean, certainly, at the early part of its history, when Freemasonry was originating, it was primarily rich. It wasn't so much powerful people per se, but it was the richer classes that were joining because they were the only ones. They were the one class that had both the money to join and who had the time to join. Everybody else was too busy working on the fields from noon till night to be engaged in Masonic meetings. But certainly over time that's changed. I would say by the late 19th century and early 20th century, certainly, Freemasonry in North America was fairly well democratized, and you had everything from janitors and custodians to millionaires not only joining Masonic lodges, but sitting together in Masonic lodges. And in many cases, it was a situation of you could have the janitor actually sitting as a worshipful master and giving instruction to the millionaire, and the millionaire would be expected to follow it. So, um, no, Cordy, you're not late. You get here when you want to be here. It's no worries at all. It's just wonderful to have you join. Um, why do most European Mason houses? Well, it depends on the jurisdiction. It could either be called a chessboard, like the black and white squares, or you could call it a mosaic payment, an emulation ritual. Within Freemasonry, the black and white checkerboard pattern, really what it's meant to represent is it's meant to represent the duality of good and evil. right and wrong. Kind of this idea of in society, there's always these two elements in the heart of man. There's always these two elements, good and bad. And it's our responsibility to tend toward the good as much as we can, or to focus on trying to, be on the good side of things. In mosaic payment and emulation, it more represents the duality of life between having, you can have excellent days and you can have terrible days. You can be successful one day and, failing the next. And in those times, you have a responsibility to not become too despondent when things are going poorly, nor too excited or presumptuous when things are going well, but rather to remain temperate in all things. I do not know what Bush and 322 references, Cram, but thank you for being here. I am in a wheelchair. That is true. Um, yes, Cram, I am always sitting down. I am a tough MFer. Well, that's true. It depends on where you're at, Harry. When you're where you're at, Dad. In America, it's something different, and some European countries do follow York. Not everyone follows emulation. But I will say, from a Masonic perspective, I do really like the Mosaic payment lessons. One of my more favorite ones. And there's a lot of great lessons within Freemasonry, by the way, and a lot of great symbols. But that's one of the better ones. Rwand S is back. Thank you for being here once again. I hope you're doing well. Great to see you since what, 8 hours ago? Great to have you back once again. Yes, Halsall. I just found this out this year, maybe 7, 8 months ago. The Statue of Liberty was built by Freemasons. The architect who, at least I don't know about built per se, but the architect who designed the Statue of Liberty, and I believe the chief kind of builder were both Freemasons. Well, they can definitely encourage you, Rwan, to learn about space and stuff yourself. In fact, within Freemason, one of our instructions is to study the liberal arts and sciences, including astronomy. Actually, I've done a couple of podcast interviews with NASA scientists from the Jet Propulsion Laboratory and the Space Agency to talk about space exploration, particularly the way that we within Freemasonry can, or the way that scientists use geometric principles going all the way back to Euclid to study space, which I thought was really, really cool. So you can check out those episodes. If you type in square and compass and Euclid, you'll see some of those episodes. Yeah, I thought it was fascinating the fact that NASA would name a satellite after a what 2,000 more than that year old Greek philosopher and Greek mathematician. It just goes to show how ancient geometric ideas continue to matter in 2025. It did, yeah, but the engineer or the architect were Masons. No, Rwand. Freemasons don't have any special knowledge about, let's say, space that other people, don't know. We don't have any specialized knowledge like that. The exclusive private knowledge we have relates to what are called modes of recognition, which honestly is not even that private anymore. You can find it all online if you really want to find it. Um, and that has to do more with the ways that Freemasons recognize one another, as opposed to anything to do with space or governments or science. All that stuff is part of the public, as it should be. Yes, Spirited Justice. I wish sleep and pizza were liberal arts as well. I support you on that 100%. No worries, Cram, but thank you for being here. And I hope you'll join me tomorrow. I don't know the exact time yet, probably between 12 and 1 Eastern. I'll be live streaming me getting a Masonic tattoo, which should be really, really cool and really, really fun. So I hope you'll check that out. Well, they were getting released today, so there you go. Please hit the like and subscribe button. Bix100009. I have no idea what that means. Let's not rob anything, banks or otherwise, because we in Freemasonry follow the laws of the country in which we're located, and that includes not robbing any banks. Plus, I wouldn't be able to get away. I would leave tire tracks wherever I went, and people would see who did it. They just follow the tire tracks back to my secret hideout. Well, I mean, I never learned anything directly from the Masons in the sense that, the Masons don't have any sections talking specifically about, like, this is how you manage stress. Having said that, certainly within Freemasonry, I've had many stressful moments trying to, for example, organize a degree. You got a new person joining, being passed or raised. You're responsible for organizing the degree. However, maybe some people have canceled. Maybe you got some last minute cancellations, some last minute changes. Or you're dealing, like, who knows? There's stressful moments within Freemasonry. And certainly, if nothing else, then through trial by fire, you kind of learn how to deal with those things. I guess what I would say is, you know, control for stress, and this advice actually comes from John Cena, the GOAT. Control the controllable. So you have exams tomorrow. You can't control the time of the exam. All you can control is, you can't control what's going to be on the exam. That's up to the professor, the teacher. But you can control the controllable. And in your case, just like you write there, it's about being prepared. So try to be as prepared as you can possibly be. And if you do that, then you have controlled the controllable, and the rest of it, you kind of, in some sense, leave up to the fates to decide. Because I don't think there's anything else that you can do beyond that. So yeah, that I guess is my response for whatever it's worth. Dream Seeker with great advice as well. Don't overstress, because once it's done, you realize the amount of stress wasn't worth it. I mean, I've never heard of any situation being made better thanks to or due to stress or worry. Right? I've never heard of that happening in the past. So to me, it's one of those things where it's clear. It seems like a very counterproductive thing. Now, I understand there's issues with anxiety and there's issues that people struggle with, but so not everybody can control their concerns or control their fears or their worries. But to me and to my mind, you should try to, recognize that it's not going to make things better. Figure out what you can control and control those things, and leave the things you cannot control. Kind of just accept you can't control those. Practice mindfulness techniques. I've actually done some podcasts about that. Breathing exercises, meditations, and just do your best. I mean, by definition, I know it sounds kind of cheesy, but by definition, what can you do but your best, I think sometimes we forget, we put too much pressure on ourselves, right? So that's my humble opinion. Being a bit alerted is good. I mean, yeah, I think that there's kind of a semantics question there, but I do kind of agree. So a little bit of stress, healthy stress, you call it alertness, is good. It's like a little bit of fear, right? If I'm going to do something new, something different, something challenges, something challenging. A little bit of fear is probably healthy because it will sharpen and focus my mind on the problem that I'm facing. However, I need to be careful that I don't allow it to become too much, that the fear overwhelms everything else, if that makes any sense. Um, and mindfulness techniques, practice those as well. Um, Well, goodbye, Rowan. You never have to apologize to me. That's very kind of you. If I get, if I feel like somebody's saying some bad things on stream, I'll probably give them a timeout. That doesn't mean I have anything against them, by the way. It just means I'll give them a timeout for the day, and then they can come back tomorrow, or they come back the next day and join the stream once again. Like I said, I'll avoid as much as I can. I do my best to avoid. Banning people or taking anything personally. Hall Saul, read my comment. Total Tech, thanks again. Do Freemasons prefer to hire other Freemasons over more qualified persons? Not in my experience. I mean, I'm not going to say because there's 850,000 Freemasons in the United States. There's probably around 50,000 in Canada, something like that. I mean, are there times when you have somebody looking for a job and a Mason happens to have a job and gives it to his Masonic brother? I'm sure that's happened many times in the past. I'm sure it'll happen many times in the future. But in my experience, they're not hiring people if they're not qualified or if they're less qualified. Because at the end of the day, the Freemason who's looking to hire people is still trying to, if he's hiring somebody, he's still trying to run a business, right? And we in Freemasonry are taught we need to put our family and our work ahead of Freemasonry. That includes our hiring practices, I would assume, for our business, and not, hiring unqualified people that will damage the business. So at least that's my opinion on that. In my experience, most people who own businesses, their Freemasonry is their Freemasonry and their business is their business. And as much as is possible, they try to separate the two. In some ways, I don't know if that's the healthiest, strongest thing for Freemasonry. I think in some ways, if our Masonry were more intertwined with all aspects of our life, be it our family or our businesses, we might have a little bit stronger. Freemasonry might be a lot stronger, but that's a story for another day, that's for sure. That's true. Everybody ages. Although I once read a quote saying, "Never be upset. Never be upset about getting older. It's a privilege denied to many," which is true. A lot of people never get the privilege of getting older. So, having said that, I'd rather not get any older. Thank you. I'm very happy to be at. I'm very, very happy to be 42. I don't need to be 43. Honestly, I was happy to stay at 35. That was a great age. I don't know what a black sun is, Randy. Do you mean a black hole? Um, when you talk about Freemasonry, Jose Corderio, there is no number one leader. That's not how it works. Freemasonry is jurisdictional. There are different grand masters of different jurisdictions. No one has any, no one master has any jurisdiction or leadership over the other. They're all equal. So the Grand Master in Ontario is not any higher or lower than the Grand Master of Texas. They are both equal within Freemasonry. Um, but if you're asking who's the number one leader of Square and Compass Promotions, that is me. That is I. All right, we're going to give it some more time, see who else joins. This stream is just responding to the Chat questions. Yes, not quite normal. You're absolutely right. There is many times multiple jurisdictions within a single jurisdiction. For example, most states will have a Prince Hall jurisdiction and a AF and AM jurisdiction. It is very unfortunate, Hall Saul, that the leadership of the KKK decided to name their leader the Grand Wizard, which is a pain in the ass because a lot of people confuse Grand Wizard with Grand Master. But no, it's not the same thing. First of all, because the KKK and the Freemasons stand for opposite things. But second, it's because, to my understanding, the way it works is the KKK has a single governing body that sets the rules for every kind of member across the United States and beyond. Whereas in Freemasonry, there is no national Masonic body. It's again jurisdictional. There's one in Texas, or there's the Grand Masters in Texas. There's a Grand Masters in New York. There's a Grand Masters in Michigan, and all 50 states, plus Washington, D.C. And each one is not superior over any other one. I do not. The Nephilims, I think they're called, Jose, I do not believe in giants. I tend to be very skeptical of the supernatural as a general rule. So I do not believe giants existed. I mean, well, I guess if you're talking about that type of giant, then yes, I believe Shaquille O'Neal exists, and he's a pretty giant dude. But I don't believe in supernatural giants. And Shaquille O'Neal, not only is he a giant of a man, he's also, from what I've read, incredibly charitable and kind, and also a Freemason. So he was actually um, made a Mason on site. One of the few who's been made a Mason on site. Well, I mean, I think, let's say anything over 10 feet, which I think there actually have been people who's been alive who's been over 10 feet, but very few. So I don't believe anybody's ever made it over 20 feet, that's for sure. Good morning, Jim Rat. Thank you for being here. I hope you're doing well. Well, I suspect those are dinosaur bones, like my dad is saying, not human bones. Andre the Giant, one of the greatest of all time. Maybe the greatest of all time, depending who you ask. Certainly he should be up there as in GOAT status. For me, the GOAT is either Roman Reigns or John Cena, but it's hard to not argue that Andre the Giant is one of them. Homeowners Association. I'm definitely not wealthier than you, homeowners. I highly doubt it. If you want to help me get wealthy, please do a 99-cent super chat. I guess what I'd say is don't worry so much about wealth. Try to just do things that make the world a better place. I'm glad life is good. Hello from Carol in England, Jamie. Hello from Cameron in Canada. Ashton, Big Boss, or Ashton is the Big Boss. Hello, thank you for being here. I hope that you're doing well also. I think it's just a habit I have. I have a hard time staring directly at the camera. Plus, I also have my computer on where I try to keep track of what's happening. And if any exciting news pops up, I try to mention it. I try to pay attention to what people are posting about Freemasonry. Plus, I think it'd be weird if I just look straight at the camera the entire time. Um, Toangatoa. I don't know if I'd say that. I've never been to Germany, but I'm sure it's a beautiful country. Not everyone can see that. Somebody just wrote hello from S-hole Germany, which I don't know. I don't know. I've never been to Germany, but I've met some Germans. Actually, I was staying in a hostel in Bogota, Colombia recently, and there were two German ladies staying in the hostel as well. They were backpacking through South America. They'd actually just come from the Amazon. And we were talking about, or they were talking to me just about Germany and about their trip. Germany seemed like a really cool place. They said the best part about Germany is the food they have there, including the bread. So makes me think I'd like to visit it at some point. Yeah, I haven't done one for a while, not quite normal, but I'd like to get back into them once again. I was even thinking of doing a watch along of um, Christmas Hallmark movies because those are my favorite type of movie, Christmas Hallmark movies. So I was thinking of maybe doing one of those. Maybe I can get one in before Christmas. Who knows? Or maybe on Christmas Day. Well, Ashton, it's not an either or because I know many Christian Freemasons who would say, they follow Jesus first. That is their supreme being, and they're also a Freemason. So it's not, Freemasonry or Jesus. I would say for Christians, Freemasonry is meant to complement their faith in Jesus, as it does for Muslims with their faith in Allah, as it does for Jewish people, indigenous. Freemasonry is complementary to religion. Um, so yeah. I highly doubt that, Marty. I mean, first of all, we're just going to ignore the implication of what you said, Marty, and take it as real. I don't think any place was better 80 years ago, whether it be in terms of technology, health, life expectancy. Believe me, if I ever, knock on wood, I hope I never do, but if I were to ever get ill or sick, let's say, heaven forbid, I get cancer, I'd be much happier to get cancer in 2025 than I would 80 years ago, or for that matter, any other type of disease. I don't think anything, I mean, don't get me wrong, there were a lot of wonderful things 80 years ago, and probably in some ways, a lot of the things that we take for granted now were better, like more human connection and things like that. Weren't dealing with, the issues around conspiracy and social media. Having said all of that, I think, I'm a pro technology guy. And certainly even for me having no legs, to have been born with no legs, especially in Germany, but anywhere, 80 years ago would have been a very different life than the life I got to lead because I was born with no legs in 1983 in Canada. Um, we should be more we should be more positive about the world in which we live. And immigration is a wonderful thing, in my humble opinion. My dad's an immigrant and very grateful for immigration. It allowed him to be, part of Canada. And if he couldn't immigrate, I would have grown up in England and had a terrible accent and sounded ridiculous. So there is that as well. I have no idea what you're saying, TOA, but it doesn't sound positive. Love the London accent. That's interesting about, well, my dad was from Northern England, so I would have sounded really ridiculous. That's the cool thing and interesting thing about England. And I think about it when I compare it to like Canada, right? Like there are different regional accents in Canada, but it's so much more spread out. Like you can travel through all of Ontario and the accent seems to be relatively consistent. And that's like a 12-hour drive. If you're in Britain, you drive for 2 hours, you hear seven different accents. I don't think Canada's lost its way. DMC, I love Canada. I've said it a million times. Canada is the greatest country in the world, in part because we have the greatest neighbors in the world, which I also believe. I love the States, but I love Canada. I love my country. Well, thank you, William. That's very kind of you. However, I would say I don't know if I would describe my disability as extreme. There are challenges that come with having no legs, obviously, but there are challenges that come with just being alive. Life is a challenge, And again, being born when I was and where I was in the country I was certainly help to mitigate a lot of the challenges that one would otherwise face. Geordie accent, yes. I speak Quebec French and Creole. Okay, I like the Creole accent. And I don't mind the French accent either, just for the record. Just for the record. I don't want somebody from Quebec yelling at me. I haven't spent, honestly, though, a ton of time in Quebec. I wish I'd spent more visiting it because the few times I've been there, and it's always been exclusively Montreal or Gatineau, it's been wonderful. So I should get there more often. Okay, well, I mean, I speak English and bad English, so I'm not going to judge anybody if you can speak exclusively one language. It's been my goal to be able to learn multiple languages, and I never get around to it, which is very annoying. Um, I would say one of the things is I've talked about this before. I think we within Freemasonry would do well to be able to speak different languages or communicate in different languages as a way to communicate to our brethren who are coming with different languages to the craft, or even to promote the craft somewhat to people of different languages. Like, for example, if you live in Los Angeles, I understand there's a significant Latino population there that speaks Spanish as their first language. Communicating about Masonry in Spanish might be a good way to increase interest within Freemasonry and within the Masonic Lodge. Though SKIT, I'm going to call you skit, is not wrong. Sometimes the best thing you can do is just learn one thing and learn it well, as opposed to, full ass one thing. Don't half ass a bunch of things. Yes, every city, even not even every city, but like sometimes just the rural areas have different accents as well, which is interesting enough. Certainly in Canada, where, to be government, very often you need to speak both official languages. But even for private corporations, it's just a skill that you have. If you're applying for a job somewhere and two candidates are basically the same, but one can speak multiple languages and the other can't, that's obviously going to be pretty helpful. And maybe will encourage the lodge to, it will encourage the job to hire them. Interesting enough, when I was the worshipful master, one thing I tried to do is do multiple is to create a summons and have both an English and a French message within the summons to help our brethren who are um, who spoke French. Because in my lodge, we actually had a lot of brethren whose first language was French. They spoke English, but their first language was French. I thought it was kind of a nice gesture to provide a message in both English and French, which helped them. I thought it was just a way to say, we see you, we appreciate you being here, we know you're speaking our language, so for just a moment, we'll speak yours or we'll communicate in yours. Um, I know I got a gap within my teeth. I've grown to accept it. This stream is about Freemasonry. I've been a Freemason for 20 years. It's about promoting the ways Freemasonry was and is relevant to the communities in which it's located. Not quite normal. I learned enough to get by in certain languages. I love to know Russian more, but very different dialect. It is very different, at least that's what I'm told. But still, good for you for trying. I mean, I know English and bad English, and that's it. So, what can I say? Wish I knew. I wish I knew more. It's always on my list of things I want to learn. I just never get around to it. A lot of government jobs do, yeah. I always worked for the province when I worked in government, which meant I never had to worry so much about knowing French and English. But even in our offices, there was usually at least a couple people who knew both languages. So, in case you did have a client come in who spoke French exclusively or was more comfortable in French. We are now 12 whole subs away from 3,100 subscribers. Well, Lobo La 956, I don't know if I'd completely agree with you on that. I'm also not going to completely disagree with you on that. Freemasonry certainly is not at near the numbers or the relevance that it once was, which is unfortunate. Maybe through things like this podcast, we can regrow its relevance. I wouldn't call it defunct by any means. There's about 850,000 Freemasons in the United States, give or take. There's probably about 50,000 in Canada. That's certainly significantly reduced as compared to what it once was, but that's not the same thing as saying it's defunct. I definitely wouldn't say that. Um, And, Freemasons are doing a lot of good things. One thing I've always been trying to use with this podcast is to promote the ways Freemasonry was and is relevant to the communities in which it's located. That includes not just the was relevant, but is relevant. If you want to know how it is relevant, check out, for example, Masonic Charities Foundation, which is an excellent resource, talks about all the things that Freemasons do in United Kingdom, specifically England and Wales and the Channel Islands. Um, Eat me? Well, Freemasons are old, that's for sure. Some of them are gay, some of them are straight. Freemasonry doesn't discriminate based on sexual orientation. I tried to join 15 years ago, and I'm sorry that happened, Lobo. Maybe the secretary got busy. Like, I don't know. I can't speak to why that would happen. Freemasons are human beings. I always say that, which means we have all the good and bad parts of what it means to be human, including sometimes we drop the ball. If you're still interested, I'd encourage you to try to contact them once again and see if they respond. At least that is what my recommendation would be. We don't skit. I mean, in a lodge, outside of lodge, who knows? People can talk about whatever they want, and I've seen many Masons get into political disputes. But within a Masonic lodge, while it's, in labor, it's called, or working, or having its official meetings, there is no discussion of politics or religion allowed. And also, Masons do a lot of charitable work. Again, you can check out the Masonic Charitable Foundation for an example of that. And Dad brings up a good point. We're talking a lot about language. Sign language is a language. One of my more proud moments was having a sign language interpreter at a Masonic event I put together. I thought that was really, really cool. And it was really wonderful to have them there. I loved it. And a lot of people commented on it and how pleased they were to see it. So that is absolutely something you see very often. I thought it was very cool. What up, G? What is going on? Rolling the losing dice. Thank you for being here. Well, I mean, not quite normal. Freemasonry, at the end of the day, it's a civic organization, which means civic means of the community, which means it has to be respectful of the community members, and that includes their religious and their political beliefs, whatever they may be. If we in Freemasonry start to discuss politics, start to discuss religion in lodge, and start to air out differences or grievances, that can cause some problems. So. And just like you say, right? It's the truth of the lodge, which is different from anything else, right? Which is the political opinions. the truth of Freemasonry, right? Why we meet is to try to build one another up, at least in a metaphorical sense. If we start to discuss politics and it becomes a thing, that tears people down very often. I wouldn't say so, Slick Rick, because there is no ruling elite or servants within Freemasonry. I mean, Freemasonry is democratic by its nature. There's kind of rulers, if you want to put that within the craft, but they're not rulers in the sense. I mean, first of all, they're term limited. Every year, there's a new vote in a lodge for a new master. Every couple of years, there's a new grandmaster, and it kind of cycles through. I've known so there's not like a single government that is in some sense a ruling elite. There is no ruling elite within Freemasonry, nor are there servants. There's democratic institutions and democratic offices, and there's a lot of churn within those offices as well. Um, but I would never, look at a Freemason who's, let's say, not the worshipful master and consider him a member of a servant class. Because servants, as a rule, amongst other things, tend not to get to vote on the leadership or on their office or on the quote unquote rulers, which I'm not even a big fan of that term. By the way, don't forget, you can do a super chat, just 99 cents. Uh, Roll the losing dice. I know that there's no ruling elite in Freemasonry, the same way I know there's not presently an invisible leprechaun in my apartment, which is to say, I don't know for sure, right? I can't prove, or excuse me, I can't disprove a negative. So is it possible that there's something that I'm not seeing, or that has been hidden from me? There's always the possibility that there's something hidden from you wherever you go and whatever you do. What I have to rely upon is my own observations and my own reasons based on, the 20 years approximately I've been a Freemason, the thousands of meetings, events, and celebrations I've attended. And not only have I attended them, but I've attended around the world in Canada, United States, South America, Asia, and Europe. The friendships I've made with Freemasons, the both public and private discussions I've seen, and I need to take all of that into account. And at a certain point, you make the leap of faith, not blindly, but you say, based on everything I've seen and experienced and observed and, been a part of, what is more likely? That there's a ruling elite in Freemasonry that I've just never seen an indication of, despite all of my experiences, because they're so good at hiding from me, or I'm so, obtuse to not be able to see it, or that there simply is no ruling elite. And I go with the latter. And what I'd say is to all of those who believe in the former, that there is a ruling elite, my response would be, you can believe whatever you want to believe, but my decades of experience combined with the breadth and width of that experience should be, I believe, pretty decent evidence for you to reconsider. I wouldn't call it a secret society, Slick Rick. It's a society that has private elements to it, but it's not a secret society because I'm here talking about it. Um, well, I mean, I don't know if the rituals are important or silly. Honestly, they're probably a little bit of both. I mean, they're not silly to me, but that's because Freemasonry speaks to me, right? And who knows why it speaks to me. There's something about my personality that responds to Masonic ritual. There are plenty of people who probably find Masonic rituals quite silly, who probably find Freemasonry silly as a whole. And in those cases, it's like, so be it. You don't have to find Freemasonry important. There is no rule that says you have to love it. It's perfectly fine for you to find Freemasonry silly. In the same way, some people find professional wrestling silly. I love it, but some people find professional wrestling silly. Whatever floats your boat, to each your own. Thank you, Bear Thalamus, Cam the man indeed. Why did the Nazis raid all the lodges? Well, because Um, the Nazi Party, including and especially Hitler, used um, what's the word I'm looking for? Used conspiracy theories and tied Freemasonry into Judaism as a way to drum up support for his ideology and create an enemy out of Freemasons. And then, as a consequence, as he came to power, he continued targeting Freemasons and Masonic lodges. Um, yes, family recipes, personal conversations, absolutely. Well, again, it's whether there are or are not handshakes. I'm not going to confirm nor deny. What I will say is, um, some people find that stuff silly. Some people find that stuff meaningful. Everybody's allowed to have their own view on it. I not quite normal. I understand where you're coming from, but I personally disagree. I actually was a big fan of John Cena's final match. I think John Cena's the GOAT. I think he's the greatest professional wrestler. I think he's the greatest sports entertainer of all time. Um, and I think the ending was beautiful. Because one of the things about John Cena that I've always loved is he never lied to the audience. What I mean by that is I once saw this clip of John Cena. He was in front of one of those arcade games where it's like a bag that's hanging down and you have to punch it, right? And it records how hard your punch was. Um, and John Cena, every other professional wrestler before that point, probably after, would have like given it a legitimate punch, and they could have punched it, and John Cena could have punched it really hard too, because these are big, strong dudes, right? But John Cena, he threw a punch. He came within this close of hitting the bag, but didn't touch it. It looked like a vicious punch that just didn't connect. But, if it was somebody's face, you would have swore he punched him in the face. Anyways, got this close. Then he looked at everybody, said, I haven't punched anybody for real in 20 years, and walked away, and everybody cheered. Because that's why I say he's the greatest sports entertainer of all time. He never lied to the people. He admitted what this was. He loved it. It was his favorite thing, but he was always honest with the people about what's happening and what he's doing. And I thought smiling and tapping, it was him saying to the audience, I'm not going to lie to you. I'm not going to pretend this is something that this isn't. This is me saying, I'm done. I've done this for years. My body can no longer handle it. And I'm going to do you guys the courtesy, the kindness of not pretending this is something that it's not. This is me clocking out. I'm not quitting. It's like a job. I'm clocking out of the job for the last time. It's like I'm retiring. No one look at a guy who's retiring and say you're quitting. He's just being honest about what's happening and that he's walking away, because his body just couldn't handle it anymore. And he said that. He said, I'm slowed down in the ring. I don't have the same, ability I used to. And now I'm walking away. So I thought it was a beautiful thing. He was, that smile was him being honest and saying, look, this is me walking away. Um, so I thought it was beautiful. Bear thought, oh, certainly Freemasonry has changed a lot since the 70s. I mean, sometimes the changes are more, what's the word? Are more administrative, right? The use of email has changed Freemasonry. Online spaces like this have changed Freemasonry. The digital nature of a lot of our administrative work, how we record minutes, all that stuff has changed. But then certainly practically the number of Masons and its significant decline has changed quite a bit with the Freemasonry. Um, you're getting very personal, Soldier Boy. No comment. Yeah, but if John Cena, Dream Seeker, if John Cena had gone to sleep, it would have been lying to us. Because like, and I'm trying to think of how to put this. It's because of who Stone Cold Steve Austin was and the character he represented and what he represented, or the gimmick, or pick your term, because of who, um, like it's for every other wrestler, I would agree with you that it would have been better for him to just pass out and go to sleep and Gunther to win that way. I think with John Cena, he's the one wrestler, the one sports entertainer who could actually just smile and tap. And for me, it was okay because it fit with the character of him communicating to the audience. It just, it works for him because, when Stone Cold passed out, that was a work, right? He was working the audience. When all these different wrestlers, I can't think of others off the top of my head, Stone Cold is what comes to mind first, passed out from the pain, they were working. With John Cena, he was always honest. He never worked the audience. And so I don't know. I think it was it was it was like the last sign of respect to the audience to say, I'm a sports entertainer. We all know what this is. I'm stepping away and doing so as straightforward and as honestly as he possibly could. Um, yeah, and I mean that's even not quite normal. That's what John Cena even said at one point. He said, like, he did this interview and he said, I always said that when I lost a step, when my body could no longer keep up, I would I would walk away. And he said, I'm at the point now where I know I've lost a step, where my body can no longer go like it used to in, for example, the Orton rivalry. And so, because he knew his body couldn't go the way it used to, he chose to tap out. Because again, he's not going to lie and pretend like he's that same John Cena he was during Randy Orton. It's his 20 years later, his body is just not able to go at the same level it used to. And he, smiling and doing that was him saying, it's okay that it's over. I can accept the fact that it's over. And I don't need to try to hang on to something that's not there. So, and I would consider John Cena the greatest sports entertainer of all time. I would say Bret Hart's the greatest professional wrestler of all time, which is why for Bret Hart, I think, or even Stone Cold, it would have made more sense to just pass out and not tap out. But I think with John Cena, it makes way more sense to. I thought it was kind of a beautiful, beautiful moment, to be perfectly honest, to see somebody admit to everybody that he's done, instead of trying to wiggle out of it by, I'm going to work the audience, I'm going to pass out. No, he was honest and he didn't lie to us. Even on his way out, he admitted the truth. Um, well, I mean, I remember when Stone Cold first started in WWE as the ringmaster, and I don't think I ever saw him in WCW, but you could argue, I mean, we talk about GOATs, there's no one answer, there's so many incredible options, but you could argue, Stone Cold is the GOAT, that's for sure. So Bartholomew, the way I would say that Freemasonry has changed the most, though, is just the numbers in the 70s. They've just been declining rapidly. They started declining in 1959, and they keep on declining. So that means lodge meetings look different. There's less people. There's a lot of stuff. I get that not quite normal. And I think a lot of people feel that way now because the reason that back in the day, if you're leaving a territory, you lose, was because you were leaving a territory to go somewhere else. So it made sense that the promoter and the booker would want the person leaving to go somewhere else to lose. That way, you elevate your guy against the competition wherever it is he's going. John Cena is not going, who knows? I guess anything's possible, but as near as I can tell, John Cena is not going to AEW. He's not going to Impact. He's done. So him beating Gunther doesn't hurt the WWE because he's not going to be wrestling for a rival promotion like Bret Hart was, in the whole Montreal situation. But I just think, I don't know. I thought it was a good ending, and I think ultimately, again, anything else would have felt a little bit like we were being worked, and John Cena doesn't work the audience. So I thought it was beautiful myself. Mankind, very kind fella. Mankind has done a lot of charitable work, a lot of things for the community. He's one of the nicest guys within professional wrestling. At least that's what everybody says. I did not know that, Brother Courtney. Well, I'm glad he got the treatment. I'm glad he got the help. But all right, guys, I think we got a lower stream number today, which is fine. It goes up and down. I think I'm going to end this stream. Pay attention to what I've got coming out. I've got some cool things being released soon. Tomorrow from 12 to 1, I will be, about that time, live stream my tattoo. Check that out, and I'll talk to everybody soon. All right. See you guys later. Have a very wonderful weekend. I will be back on Monday, don't worry. So we'll be doing another live stream then as well. All right, talk to you guys later. Bye.